here in the Sefirot of Chesed, the Ramak of Moshe Devorah, the author of this book, Devorah, is going into specific ways in which acts of Hesed in the physical world actually kind of have a fulcrum, a lever effect on the spiritual realm, so that the things that we do here have an effect there. And therefore, when a person actually does acts of Chesed in this world, he should be trying to elevate, of course, the quality of the act as much as possible, which means, number one, avoiding doing it for self-interested reasons, but rather to do it because the Kadosh Baruch Hu has commanded a person, and to try and truly do good for other people. And beyond that, which is the intention the author was exploring in what we saw yesterday, a person should have in mind that he's actually doing chesed with the Kadosh Baruch Hu. He's doing chesed with the Kadosh Baruch Hu. Why? Because in doing this act of chesed, he's actually enabling the divine flow of energy to come down much more smoothly through the spiritual realm, including the realm of the Sefirot, and therefore benefit the physical world in a much better way. So when a person's doing acts of chesed, he should actually increase the quality of that act of chesed, not only by thinking about doing it for the other person and not for his own self-aggrandizement, but actually to do it for Kadosh Baruch Hu himself. To enable Hashem, as it were, to let that flow of creative energy come down in a very fluid, unobstructed way. And he related that more specifically in the mitzvah that we saw yesterday regarding birth. A person has a mitzvah to do chesed with the newborn, which includes the act of intimacy, the act of birth, and of course tending to the needs of the child after it's born, and all of the way in which that was connected to having in mind when doing acts of chesed associated with pregnancy, conception, pregnancy, and birth, to have in mind intentions with regarding Bina, which is the motherly Sefirah on high, and how that creative energy of Bina is impregnated through the influence of Chokhmah, and the result of that impregnation of Chokhmah into Bina, the resulting birth of the Midah of Tiferes, and that we should be thinking about during our act of taking care of the needs of being involved in the midst of being fruitful and multiply, and pregnancy and birth and thereafter, that the actual acts that we're doing in all of these events have a way of directing the flow of energy from Chokhmah to Bina down into Tiferes, into the side of Chesed, right? To the right. As opposed to having lower intentions when one does the act, the result would be that the resulting flow of energy coming from Chokhmah to Bina down into Tiferes would be directed to constriction, to the left, and that would bring about a limitation of the Shefa, the divine influence coming down, and might even result in its being expressed in the form of din. So that's just a brief summary of what we were talking about yesterday, the deeper meaning, the deeper intentions that one should have in all of the acts of chesed involved with, like I said, pregnancy and birth. The next mitzvah he's going to be talking about, which we're going to see today, is the mitzvah associated with bris milah, circumcising a male child. Yeah.
I have a question. Could you go over Tiferes one again regarding shlemos and emes regarding going to Yaakov?
Yeah, that if we say that the upper spheros of Chokhmah, Bina, and Das are faculties, the lower spheros from Chesed down to Malchus are what we call midos, or attributes. These 7 lower spheros of attributes correspond to specific, persona, individuals that manifested those midos, starting with Avram Chesed, Gvura Yitzchak, and Tiferes. Yeah, that's Yaakov. Tiferes therefore represents the proper balance between Chesed to the right and Gvura to the left. And we spoke about how even though Chesed is a good midah, it is to the extreme. It's on the right. And Gvura is also an extreme, to the left. And each extreme has its own extreme, which we mentioned in context with Ishmael and with Esav. So that means that the proper balance, the harmonious position, the correct and proper position is really the balance between Chesed and Gvura. And therefore, and that's Yaakov. Just like Yaakov is the fusion of Avram and Yitzchak, so to Tiferes is a fusion of Chesed and Gevurah, and it's being a midah associated with Yaakov, and perfection and balance associates it with Torah, and Torah is emes.
Truth.
Yeah,
What's shlemos?
shlemus is completion, perfection, and that's also connected because it says Yaakov ish tam, Yoshev oilim. Yaakov was in each tam. What does tam mean? Tam means tamim, means complete, shalom, perfect. Yoshev oilim, he sat in the tents of Torah. So this connects Yaakov with perfection, with Torah, and with truth. All of that is Tiferes.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So now, the flow of the energy that comes into Tiferes is then further refracted through the lower spheros of Netzach, Hod, Yesod, and Malchus. Okay? We're going to elaborate on those spheres more as we go along, but for this next mitzvah, we have to go forward a little bit and elaborate something about the mitzvah of Yesod. Okay? So just like the father and the mother, that's Chochmah and Bina, give either to the right or left through Chesed and Gvura, resulting in its being received by the receptacle of Netzach, of Tiferes. So the shefa, the flow that comes into Tiferes, goes also down in the downward direction to the sphere beneath it in the center, which is Yesod. Very good, Yesod. So that you see that Tiferes actually passes down to the right into Netzach, to the left into Hod, which themselves pass down, each one on the right or the left, to Yesod, just like Tiferes passes down directly to Yesod as well. So Yesod, just like Tiferes received from Abba V'Ima, but also Chesed Gvura, so too Yesod receives from Tiferes and also from Hod and Yesod. So things can be directed there to the right and the left as well. If Chesed is Avram and Gvura is Yitzhak and Tiferes is Yaakov, so Netzach is Moshe and Hod is Aaron. And without going into too much detail now about Netzach and Hod, because we're going to do that later on, I'm skipping ahead and working and focusing our attention now on Yesod. Yesod corresponds to Yosef.
Moshe's
Okay?
son.
What's that?
Is that Moshe's son?
Say it again?
Moshe Rabbeinu's son?
No.
Joseph?
Yosef, Yaakov's son.
Oh, Yaakov's son.
Yeah. It was Yosef and Binyamin, the first son of Rachel.
Oh, that's Joshua, I'm thinking.
Joshua was Moshe's follower, but not his son.
Okay.
Yeah, his main disciple. Yeah. But in any case, so this Yesod is also in the middle. This Yesod is also in the middle, which means it is a perfected, well-balanced, neutral, all-inclusive type of sphere. It's being part of that, what we call that Bariach Atichon, that middle axis, starting with Keser, right? Going down into Tiferes, going down into Yesod, and then Yesod passes into Malchus. Malchus, by the way, corresponds to David. Okay? Yes, that's the last Sphira. But before Malchus, which is the last Sphira, which receives directly from Yesod, without receiving directly from any other Sphira, it's actually Yesod that is the receptacle for all of the differentiation and all of the refraction that took place beforehand. Right? You see that? So that everything is refracted and differentiated and then recollected into Yesod, where Yesod then passes that on into Malchus. Okay? Yesod being Yosef. So Yesod is what we call the last of the 6 spheros. Even though I said there are 7 lower spheros which are Midos, Chesed, Gevurah, Tiferes, Netzach, Hod, Yesod, and Malchus, those 7 spheros are really divided into 2 categories of 6 and 1. Okay? The first 6 from Chesed down to Yesod, and then Malchus on its own. Why? Because all of those first 6 spheros are about the differentiation and the refraction, which is then reunified in Yesod and passed on into Malchus. Okay, so those 7 are really 6 and 1. The idea here might be understood a little more clearly with the analogy of refracting light. If you take, for example, a prism and you refract white light through that prism, that white light is separated into the component parts of the spectrum. The fact that you see that, let's say, multiplicity within the oneness of white light, on the one hand, can maybe deflect your appreciation of the unity of that one light, because you see that it's really made of a multiplicity. On the other hand, right, when you refract that kind of diversified spectrum through a prism again, it becomes white light again. So that process should increase your appreciation of what degree of unity and harmony there really is in the white light. That the white light really is one essence, which is simultaneously amalgamating within it a multiplicity of the spectrum. So if you look at the white light itself, it's very impressive. When you see the component parts of that white light, the multiplicity is very impressive. If you just focus on that multiplicity, you might be detracted mentally and spiritually from the oneness, which is the concept of the white light, the source of energy. And you might be dazzled by the different colors of the spectrum of that multiplicity. That's why it's very important, after recognizing how the unity is actually enhanced by the fact that it's not only one, but it's a one which nevertheless includes within it a multiplicity of details, that enhances our appreciation of how unified it really is. It's not like a collection of 6 different things, or 7 different things. It's really one thing that is simultaneously 7, which is a much higher degree of unity than if it were just one thing, right? And that's the idea of re-refracting it back into the one. So that setting it into component parts gives us an appreciation of the diversity which is included within it, but re-refracting it gives us appreciation of the oneness because it unifies those disparate parts. And that's what's happening here with the Sefirot. The divine energy is being refracted into the component parts by the different Sefirot, but the ultimate purpose is to regain the ultimate unity from which everything originates in the first place. And that's what happens when you reach Yesod.
And then Yesod passes that down
to Malchus. Okay?
Can you flip those or?
No.
Okay.
No, definitely not. And Yesod, and in this way, Yesod corresponds to Yosef, and Yosef is called Tzaddik. Yosef is called Tzaddik. So another term for this sphera of Yesod is Tzaddik. Just like Tiferes has different names we spoke about, right? So another name for this Yesod is Tzaddik. Now, as it turns out, not only do these 7 spheros correspond to 7 like persona that we're talking about, but the spheros also correspond to different parts of the body. And the way this works is as follows: that when the divine energy goes down through the different worlds, Atzilus and Bria and Yetzirah and Asiya, these are the names of 4 kind of spiritual realms through which divine energy comes from Ein Sof.
Is that the Zohar?
The Zohar talks about these things. The Tanya also mentions these things. The divine energy which is in Ein Sof, that unlimited oneness of God, starts to become translated into this worldly terms by being restricted and constricted and refined and reduced through these 4 worlds, Atzilus, Bria, Yetzirah, and Asir, which correspond to the letters of God's name, Yud, He, and Vav, and He. I'm not going to elaborate on that too much now, but within that system you have the Spheros, right? But that whole system of Spheros is understood and described as taking the form of what's called an Adam Elyon, an upper man or a supernal man. So that hierarchy of the Spheros is diagrammatically presented, not only like you have here, but also corresponding to the physiology of a human being. There's no physical form there, of course. Yeah, but the idea is that Keser, the all-inclusive sphera, the faculty sphera, corresponds to the cranium, in the spiritual realm, that is. The right and the Chochmah and Bina correspond to the two different lobes of the brain, left and right hemisphere. Das corresponds to the brainal stem, which is the place of the confluence of the right and left hemisphere of the brain, and the activity is translated through that part of the brain down into the spinal cord. Right? But there's a separation between the head and the body. Keser, Chochmah, and Bina, and Das are all in the head. The body represents the midos, so that Chesed corresponds to the right arm, Gvura to the left arm, Tiferes corresponds to the torso, right? Netzach and Hod correspond to the right and left leg, respectively. Okay? And Yesod corresponds to the sexual organ. That's foundation. Yesod is the foundation. And then the tip of that part of the body is crowned. That corresponds to Malchus, which is kingship, the crown. Yeah? So, as it turns out, these spheros take the form of what's referred to as the supernal man. The intention of God's directing energy through these spheros is to project it onto the realm or the arena, which will become the place of creation. That means that the pattern of the spheros is actually projected onto creation through the divine energy passing through them. And this is particularly so regarding the pinnacle of creation.
What would Tiferes be then?
The torso, the heart of the torso. Right? So the point is that divine energy is being projected through these spheros, refracted through the spheros, projected through the spheros onto the arena which becomes creation, and is present all throughout creation. The pattern of the spheros therefore exists in all of creation, and this is all the more so true regarding the pinnacle of creation. The pinnacle of creation being mankind. So that the spheros are actually manifested in our physiological bodies. Like we said. Keser, Chochmah, Bina, Das, Chesed, Gvur, Tiferes, Netzach, Hod, Yesod, and Malchus. Okay? Literally, right through our bodies. So when a person is learning about the spheros and contemplating the spheros, right, and connecting to the spheros, he's actually connecting not only his soul, his mind, his soul, not only his soul and his mind, but also his body to the energy of the spheros, which is constantly radiating and present in the world. And
So
the person
somebody
can tune into that.
Work on their midos. One in particular, should they read certain aspects, certain parts of Chumash and certain parts like if someone is lacking in Devorah or Din, should they read about Yitzhak?
Yeah, I mean, you could do that, not only in the Chumash, but learning about Yitzhak and the midos, or the teachings associated with Yitzhak and the way in which that's associated with Gevurah, then yes, definitely, that's a way of learning about Gevurah and connecting to it.
And so would that be a way of strengthening that?
Yeah.
That midah?
Yes, for sure. Yeah, for sure. And we've been doing some of that as we go along. Exactly. We've been doing that. We've spoken primarily about Chesed because the general scheme of things, we're in the sphere of Chesed. We're digressing, or not, maybe digressing not the right word, but we're going into more detail to the other spheros as they fit within the midah of Chesed right now. My point, therefore, then is that this midah of Yesod, which corresponds to Yosef, also corresponds to the physiological part in the supernal man and also within ourselves as that sexual organ, which is really, when you think about it, is that conduit through which all a person's energies are collected and then emitted. And the Gemara says that semen is created in the brain, and it travels down the back through the spine and departs the person's body from where it departs. Now, the sages put it in that simple way, but that doesn't necessarily mean that they understood that physiologically happening. The point is that the production of the sperm, right, is stimulated in the brain, and that brain stimulus is directed through the spinal cord to the parts of the body responsible for generating the actual, what I'm looking for, the actual production of that sperm, which is clearly located in the reproductive organs, which is, in a person's loins.
Stimulus for creation of it? What do you mean?
The central nervous system is responsible for regulating all of the different physiological processes of the body, which means that digestion really takes place in the brain.
Everything goes in.
Yeah. Yeah. So what my point is just there. When the sages tell us that the semen originates in the brain, travels through the spine, and is emitted through the sexual organ, right? They don't necessarily understood that to be physiologically, literally, what was taking place. I'm explaining perhaps what they meant was that the stimulus for the production starts in the brain. It's disseminated into
Hormones, which control
yeah,
how the testes
right.
work, yeah.
And that stimulus is then translated to the body through the spinal cord, directed to the relevant body parts, in the loins, which are responsible for the actual physical production of the sperm, and of course then it's emitted from where it's emitted. Yeah. So you see from here then that the energy travels through the body, originating here, travels through the body, right? Except taking along the way all that it needs for the purpose for what it's being created, until that, I'd say, creative funneling process of energy is concentrated in the lower the part of the body where it is. What's formulated is formulated there, and from there, after it's gathered all of the different component parts that it needs for its production, what happens? It's passed on. It passes from Yesod into Malchus. Okay? So Malchus, Yesod, is really masculine, even though it's centrally located. There's no right or left. Until now we've been saying that the spheres to the right are masculine, to the left are feminine. Why? Because generally the process of giving starts in the spheres from the right, passing on to the spheres to the left, which gestates them, and then results in a birth, which is a confluence of the two, represented in the middle. But Yesod, being the receptacle for all of those, and then passing it on to Malchus, makes it masculine.
And Malchus would be feminine.
And Malchus is feminine. The truth is, like ourselves, the spheres can be both masculine and feminine. Any particular sphere can be simultaneously a recipient and also a giver. But we're talking about generally speaking. So, why am I saying all of this? Because we're talking, this is the background information that's important to understand what he's going to be saying about this next mitzvah, which is, once we've had the proper kavanas to ensure a smooth and harmonious and fruitful birth, we have to start then, the next mitzvah is to talk about circumcising the child. Circumcising the child, therefore, is going to have to do with that part of the spheros, which corresponds to the place of circumcision, which is Yesod and Malchus. Okay?